To live.
You're now watching Two Old Farts Making Noises. Welcome to Canadian Art Today with your host, Paul Constable.
Well, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah, it's cold as H day today here, about 30 below. We're all nestled in the studio, so we're just
Wait, 30 below.
30 below, man. Yeah.
So that would be for people in Celsius. That would be what, like negative 15.
40 is 40, so we're
Okay.
at 30. So in Fahrenheit, it would be, yeah, you're in your 20 something. Yeah, I don't know the exact.
Oh, you're Celsius. So 30 is 30. Yeah. So yeah, that's nothing. You're fine. That's warm. It's a heat wave. Stop it. So it's not like Austin, Texas.
Yeah, we're fine. No, we're used to it. Yeah. Anyway,
Very cool.
We got an exciting show today.
Yes.
We have, yeah. Looking forward to it. Been looking forward to it all week, Paul.
Yes.
Me as well. It's a great thing to be able to talk with people that have really made it in the world, and I mean it's struggles, but we'll talk to Tom. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce your guest before we bring him in?
I do, and say today's guest is a Canadian comic book artist and penciler. He's had and is still having an illustrious career as a comic book artist. I mean, his stuff is actually on the shelves of stores, and people are buying his stuff regularly. There isn't too many superheroes he hasn't drawn. I mean, that's the way it is in that business, and he's known best for his penciling of titles such as the New Titans, Adventures of Superman, Superboy, Power Company, Robin, New Thunderbolts, Xmen, and Heroes. I mean, Tom travels all over North America, participating in Comic-Cons now. He's a very busy guy. He just came from Portland last weekend, and he's in Cincinnati this weekend. So he is jet-setting all over the place on behalf of DC, I think, Comics. Would you please welcome Canadian comic book artist and the man who killed Superman, Mr. Tom Grummett.
Hey.
Very, very excited.
Be clear, Dan Jurgens killed off Superman. Jerry Ordway and I brought him back.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you're definitely a team. You can't get rid of that guy all by yourself, for sure.
Right.
Who had the kryptonite? Did you have kryptonite in your pen? Is that how you did that, or is that what,
no? No, just the magic of a writer and a penciler working together.
Yeah, and we're gonna get through some of that process. I mean, we're talking analog days, pretty much. In the early days, I mean, we talked about this quite a few years ago, and I mean, you're starting at, we just kind of back up here. We'll just, not too many people can say they're still in the same business and industry as you are, right? You're still doing what you love to do, right? Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still am keeping my hand in. I'm not working on a monthly title like I did when I started years and years back.
Yeah.
But every once in a while I get tapped to work on something.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I mean, that the industry has kind of been up and down every 10, 12 years. It seems to be in a low, and then it goes on a rocket trip again, and comic business being what it is. I guess, like, how many years have you been drawing now? Can you professionally drawing for comic book companies? How long can you say you've been doing that? When did you start?
Over 30 years now. I think I broke in, started working at DC around 1988.
Okay.
And started by doing what's called fill-in work, which is where you or a penciler may be brought in to help with the scheduling
Yeah.
Because, you know, I used to call it, you know, you had to, working in comics was like feeding an elephant. You were never, ever, you know, never, ever really caught up and finished.
Right. So basically you're saying illustrators are pretty much like hired guns, right? Like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
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 I think it's pretty much always been that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You develop a style, and then I guess in a following as well. And I don't know, does the name draw fans to buy those books, or like you get used to drawing either Superman, Batman, in a style that you can, I guess, draw. There's a number of you drawing the same characters, right? Correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back in the day when I was an official Superman artist, there were 4 Superman titles being published every month.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
So there were 4 different creative teams making that happen.
Right.
And
So,
go ahead.
yeah. So go through that process. Let's just start in the early days of what you would do. Like, I know we talked about it a long time ago, but it's, you know, the concept comes from the company. Said, who comes up with the concepts? Said, if you go through a process, you and a writer got a project to work on. How does that go through the stages of the different sections of like types of artists that finally get the finished product out? Can you just kind of just do a step by step, go through that process?
Well, it really begins with the writer.
Mm-hmm.
Until the writer comes up with the story, nothing really can move forward. The writer will develop either a plot or a script for the artist to illustrate.
Right.
When I worked on the Superman titles, I was working with Jerry Ordway, who was the writer and had been an artist on the Superman books and a number of other books. So he came from an artistic sensibility. And we worked from plots. Now, a plot is a page-by-page description of what's going on in the story, rather than a script, which is a panel-by-panel description of what's going on in the story. And what was nice about working from plots is I had more flexibility in how to pace the story, how many panels would be on a page, and you'd really get a nice rhythm going that way. Working from a full script, the artist is a little more hamstrung in terms of what he can do, because usually all the dialogue is already, you know, in the script, and the number of panels is already set. So in working from a plot, I have more creative input into the way the story unfolds.
Okay, so you're doing the pencils. Was that initially what you're doing? You're the penciler. Yeah. That's what they say. Yeah. So you're scripting it in visuals. That's what you're doing, right? To match the conversation that the writer has written.
Yes.
Yeah.
Working from a plot, as I say, it's a page-by-page description, and then the dialogue tends to be added after the pencils are done.
So they know where the little clouds go, right? The word clouds, and they figure those out.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Once I'm done with the pencils and the writer has come up with the dialogue, the pencil art is then handed over to the inker. Some artists ink their own work. I do not, because I'm too darn slow at it. I agonize far too much over that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And unlike what a lot of people might think, going over the pencil art in India ink is not a process of tracing. It's a process of interpreting what a pencil line means. And a good inker has to make brick look like brick, skin look like skin, glass look like glass, that kind of thing.
Right.
So they are artists in their own right.
Yeah.
I wish I could ink as good as some of the guys who've inked me over my career.
Yeah. Well, they make you look good. That's what you want.
That is absolutely what
I used to be like that in advertising. I said, there's got production guys in the back make me look good. So
Yeah.
I give them a quick layout and they come out and make me look magic. So in those days, you'd pencil something on a plot and package them all up and throw them on FedEx, correct? Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually, 5 or 6 pages would go into New York once a week via FedEx overnight. Back then, that seemed to be, a pretty
worked.
standard thing.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. So what's happening? Yeah, go ahead.
Fax machines and FedEx were the cornerstone of the business.
Immediacy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So have you moved to a digital pencil? Are you doing anything like that at all?
No.
Have you tried it? Have you tried?
I have.
The new ones? Yeah.
I actually was at a convention in Vancouver last year, and an artist friend of mine who was also at the show had his Cintiq pad with him at the bar.
Of course.
And yeah, of course. And he said, "Tom, you got to try this out. It's the most fantastic thing." And he's not a young guy. He's younger than me, I think. But I played around with the thing, and there was way too much what I like to call knob twiddling and button pushing.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're working with a pencil, your brain knows to push or not, and you turn it sideways, so you can get different weights, and you've already got that button thing is already in your head. It's not a physical thing you have to adjust. Yeah, I agree. There's been some guys are magic at it. Well, I guess once you start and get used to using it, that's the process, right? So you've gone to inking. So it's gone down to the inker, and then where did it go in those days after inking?
Okay. Another byproduct of the digital side of things was when I started working at DC, all the lettering and the word balloons were done right on the board.
Wow. Yeah.
And in ink. So at that time, when the pencils were done and the dialogue was finished, both of those went to the letterer. The lettering was done next. And then the inker would get it. Once computers got in the way, then the inking could be done and the lettering added afterwards via Photoshop or whatever, program existed at that time. So what happened to when I got my original art back was in the early days, all the lettering would be on the page. And then once computers got in there, I would get my original art back and there was no lettering at all.
Yeah. So you get to keep all your original art? They send it back to you?
It used to be split 2/3 of the issue to me, 1/3 to the inker.
Oh, okay. So you can do what you like with those. You could sell them. You can have a show. You could do anything you want with those.
Yeah, hang them on the wall.
Yeah. I can imagine how many you'd be hanging on the wall by now. You'd be a fire hazard if you had that many things hanging on the wall.
Yeah, there are 6 tote boxes full of that,
Holy smokes! Yeah, no, that's
at least.
yeah. So when you go through
If,
that,
if
and
I may interject really quick, Paul,
go
if
ahead.
you ever need to get rid of one of those tote boxes, I'll be more than happy to frame them and hang them on the wall. So just FYI, just I don't want you to think
And
you're
I-
struggling and hoarding your
Yeah.
you're at your drawings. So
Yeah, and
sorry,
I could take the odd box or two as well. So
there you
I'll
go.
even,
So
even,
just
even pay the shipping to Holland. There you go.
Well, they come with a price. They really do.
everything does, my friend.
Yeah,
And they
Everything
would.
does.
Stephen will ask you that a bit later. About
Yes, I will.
that's his go-to question. How much?
How much? It's a New Yorker in me. What can I say? Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue with your interview. I just had to interject. We can always talk about boxes. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. So I guess in your dreams, have you ever, as a kid, did you ever think you'd be doing this as a living? Like, living out this. I mean, I thought this was amazing when I first heard that you did this. I mean, that would have been a dream of mine as a kid to say I actually did these drawings, like I and published them. Everybody's reading them. You did that? I guess the question is, did you, as a kid, ever dream that you'd be able to do something like this?
Yes. Yeah. From I think I first picked up a pencil before I could read, and I was always attracted to the 4-color comic books.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what it was, whether it was Batman or Uncle Scrooge or Casper or Little Lulu or the Avengers. If it was a comic book, my nose was deep into it.
So as
And
a kid,
I wasn't just reading them, I was studying them.
yeah.
And
So as a
trying to
kid,
reproduce.
did you do your own? Actually, did you create your own little comic books when you were a kid?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're long lost to time, but
Oh dear.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
And I never really lost that love of them and drive to do it.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was convinced that as soon as I graduated, I was going to go to New York City and start working for DC or Marvel.
Wow. Yeah, that's great to have that kind of vision. It gives you that, um, um, I guess, satisfaction. I guess that you actually accomplished what you set out to do at such an early, young age. I mean, that's it's quite an accomplishment. Especially to still, like you say, still be in the business. I mean, it's how many different jobs and businesses does a person go through in a lifetime? I mean, you can jump companies, but you're still doing relatively the same thing. I mean, some of the tools change. I mean, you're fortunate that you're still able to use the tools you have. I know in commercial art, it's changed completely. Threw all the markers away, all the pencils, and you're if you don't know so many programs on computer, you're done. Yeah, you're half the production as well. You have to do. So I guess. Mostly, did you work with DC or Marvel at those days? Is that where most of that came from?
Yeah, I started with DC and I worked with them pretty much solid for a good 10 years. I mean, I was never exclusive.
Right.
Because I wanted to, kind of keep my options open. So at times I'd be working for both DC and Marvel simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah.
But not for long, because
Yeah.
you have to, when I was young, I could easily handle 2 books a month,
Wow. Yeah.
which is about 60 comic book pages every month,
Well, that's a lot of,
including covers.
yeah. So,
So
yeah. Maybe David, you could roll it. Maybe we can start a couple of images for us to look at. Maybe the beginning stages here. Oh, there we go. Fantastic 4. Excellent. yeah. So this one of your pencils.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that Hulk? Is that who that is?
That is the thing.
The Thing. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. No. You know what? I'm not completely literate in comics. I don't buy a lot of comics right now, and haven't for years. But I used to read. All my kids had comics, and we'd read them together, and I'd sneak them off and read them after they were done. But they were like Archie's and, like you said, Lulu and some of those. And there's the occasional Superman that snuck in there, and we'd look at those. But and as a kid, I followed a lot of the Superman, Batman. I used to read those as a kid. Every kid did, but you know, that industry. We'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, not as kids we'd understand that, but it had its highs and lows. I mean, economically. I mean, in a boom up into the 1938 into the 50s, and then it started declining again in the 50s. I guess TV and all the other things were coming on stream, but and a disaster happened in the 90s. I mean, there was a real downsurge in comics, and I guess it was speculators and collectors doing that caused that issue. And there's a glut of overruns on the market, according to what I've been reading. Just try to understand what had happened, and that really affected your lifestyle and what you were doing. And so I sensed, you know, the killing of superheroes just to get your audience excited about a product again. Am I right?
Yeah, to a point.
Yeah.
The nice thing is I mean, comic books the comic industry is an industry. It is a business. The nice thing about when I broke in to the industry was it was at a time when the inmates were running the asylum.
Oh, was Jack Nicholson?
Yeah. The creative people had an enormous amount of control over what work they were doing. You know, as long as the book was selling,
Yeah.
you could keep going. When I started, if you happen to land working on a title, you generally worked on that title for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
Sometimes more.
Yeah, why break what's not broken?
Yeah.
Essentially.
You know, if your book got canceled, that was one thing.
Right.
But once you were on a title, you were generally assured of, you know, at least a year, 18 months, 2 years, or beyond, as long as, you know. And if you were working on a popular book, you were pretty much set.
Yeah.
Then there was the 90s downturn, and graphic novels started their rise. And I'm sure you're familiar with these collections.
Yeah.
And they would collect up about, say, 5 or 6 monthly issues of a title. And that would be a way of the company generating more revenue from something they'd already published in what we call floppies, you know, the individual issues.
Yeah. Yeah, they tended to be hardback, a lot of these as well, did they not?
Yeah, but mostly soft cover.
Okay. Yeah.
But what ended up happening is then the editorial departments would start gearing what they were doing towards these collections. So you would have a writer and artist team that might only work for 5 or 6 months together, 5 or 6 issues. They would be collected up onto the next guys.
Yeah.
So this is a change that, you know, kind of changed the landscape for everybody.
Right. Yeah. No. So like there's hundreds of guys working, I would imagine,
Yeah.
in the system, right? And so how does a young guy kind of start this business? How does he get into it? Like, where does he go? Is there a portfolio showing? I mean, you have to know that you could draw these characters.
Well, there used to be portfolio showings at shows. Now not so much.
Right.
I think there are a lot of young artists right now getting into the industry via websites like DeviantArt and doing web comics and things like that.
Yeah.
So that landscape has changed too.
Yeah. So they end up getting contacted by, say, DC if they consider them anything good at all. They would. I mean, it's similar to Disney. The same thing. If you're going to draw for Disney or work for them, but you've got to definitely be in the digital world now, I would think, for that to be happening. I don't know how many more just penciler guys are they still, is penciling in it the way you do it now still being done other than yourself that you know of, other people?
There are other people, you know, still working, you know, analog.
Right.
But a lot of the younger artists are working strictly digitally. They're digitally inking their own work. So there's a lot of penciler inkers.
Yeah, that happened in our industry too. You end up doing the production work as well, not just the concepts and the drawing. Not only you have to do the drawing, but then you have to have the skill set to put the color in, and in a graphic way, but in a pleasing way that you wanted, you know, to give that impact to that image. So a lot of times you don't have the skill set, like you said, all the little bells, whistles that you have to tweak to give you that color gradient that you're looking for, the right color scheme that goes with the night scene, those kind of things. And sometimes you still have to hand the digital file to somebody that can correct, and I would imagine, and adjust those things. Yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so as well. I mean, it'd be probably easier to, you know, you can Dropbox some files to, you know, production in minutes, right? So
Absolutely.
There's a good example of inking on some of that. Great type, you know. I mean, I remember these days a lot of stuff was all hand lettered type. Like, people don't realize the skill set it takes for typography. For comics, it's different. Like, you always fool or little what do you call it? The Comic Sans is always made fun of, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a classic font for what it is, right? Don't make more of it than it is. It is for comics, right? Initially, for that.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And something I've thought about an awful lot since all the lettering is done digitally these days. Is that I think what a lot of us have forgotten is that the lettering is part of the art.
I agree. Yeah.
And with lettering being all done digitally, and they're dropping the word balloons pretty much wherever they want on the artwork, that I think there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I have a few old pages hand lettered right on the boards that I take with me to comic conventions. And people are actually quite astonished to see pages with actual lettering on them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the old days of, you know, sign writing, and you know, the old days of hand lettered sign writing. I still love some of that. They used to do that by, you know, just amazing. And then vinyl came out. They did all that.
Yeah.
So let's just get up to a Superman image here. We got a little bit of color going on here.
Yeah, that was that was me coloring.
That's pretty darn good. I mean,
Yeah, it's not bad considering I was doing it all with Photoshop 2 and didn't have a clue what I was doing, but it turned out pretty good. I've turned that since into a print.
Yeah.
But I didn't do too bad a job. Pretty simple stuff, but
yeah, that's sometimes what you need though too. Simplicity sometimes there's strength in that, rather than complicating it with a bunch of other things. So let's just talk a little bit about some of these comic coms. So when did this stuff kind of start burgeoning up, like the comic coms? There's that one that I found online. And
yeah.
Yeah. Now that you were part of that, you're in on the sidebar there a little bit. Your name was there, but can you tell us a little bit about the process you went through in creation of the death and the resurrection of Superman? So did they sent you all in a room somewhere, or what did they do? How did you get the guys all together? You mean you didn't have Zoom in those days, right? So
No.
yeah.
No,
How did you what did they do to create a meeting and an event where you guys can all get together on the same page? Well, how did that happen?
Well, the way it worked was the editor. There were 4 Superman titles being published every month, and what the editor would do is once a year he would gather up the entire creative team, fly them into New York to the DC offices, put us in a room with no windows and bad food, and we would plan out a year's worth of Superman stories. Okay.
Pretty archaic, yeah.
Yeah. And everybody would have a chance to contribute to these things, which was amazing. It was wonderful. And the year that I was at this particular, we used to call them the super summits. And that year we were actually planning a wedding. Lois and Clark were supposed to get married that year. And we were, I think, 2 days into working out the details of this particular story arc over 4 titles. And we got a call from the Jeanette Kahn, the publisher, through the house phone, to that room, that the wedding was off because of a new TV show that was coming out called Lois and Clark. And it was felt that they weren't going to be married in the TV show. So it would be too confusing to the broad audience out there that they would be married in the comic books, but not on the TV show.
Yeah.
So we were not happy. And my writing partner, Jerry Ordway, whenever we got stuck on some kind of story point, his joke was, well, let's just kill him. And we laughed because he always said this. And one of the other writers, Roger Stern, I think it was, started going, I wonder how Ma and Pa Kent would react to that, or Lois, or any of the other supporting casts. And as these things do, these ideas start getting batted around, and our editor calls us all to a halt and he says, look, I'm going to have to check upstairs on this. So he phones the publisher back, phones Jeanette back and says, okay, we're you know, the wedding story is off. We've decided to kill him instead. And she said, okay. So then we were off to the races.
Yeah.
So it was amusing that in the media, it was presented that DC Comics had mandated that Superman must be killed off, when it was absolutely not the truth. DC Comics had mandated he not get married, but we decided to kill him off. We were just pivoting and coming up with a story, which is what we did every single month.
Yeah. Nice. So how did that series of, was it 4 comics then? Yeah. So how did that series go? Did it sell out? Was it popular? Was it?
Well, of course, there was a press release, and the media got a hold of it. News media. It was a slow news week.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing else was going on.
That's what
So
an artist. Yeah.
This got out, and the media picked up on it, and weirdly enough, it had legs.
Yeah.
So it went viral before there was a viral.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it went beyond what any of us expected. So there was a great deal of anticipation out there, certainly in the comic book world,
yeah,
that this was going to happen. And so we built up to it. Every one of the Superman titles and creative teams got to build towards this big death. And the gimmick was, it was this mysterious monster just shows up, breaks out of this underground bunker somewhere, his origins unknown, and just starts this rampage towards Metropolis. And each book came out 1 week after the last. That was how it shook out. 4 Superman titles, basically a Superman comic every week. So we all got a piece of the progression of this fight that culminated in Superman number 75, where Superman dies.
Yeah, it's great that it came out in like 4 pieces. You feed it to them slowly, and you build and build and build. Then did you do another series at your part where you resurrect him again? So was that a whole other 4 pieces that came out that way, or is that part of that?
Yeah,
4?
yeah, pretty much that was the way it worked. We had yet another summit to try and figure out how to bring him back.
Right.
You know, short of him sitting up in a coffin saying, "I'm back," we had to come up with a story of how we brought him back.
Right. Well, that's
and what we came up with was, because we had 4 different titles, we came up with this idea where 4 different individuals would step forward claiming to be Superman.
Uh-huh.
Superman's replacement. One was an armored genius inventor who called himself Man of Steel. Another one was one of those grim and gritty type characters that were in the vogue in the 90s called the Eradicator. Another one was a character called the Cyborg Superman, who claimed to be Superman Resurrected as a cyborg. And the fourth was a clone called Superboy. And the Superboy character was the one I worked on.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, he grows up eventually, I think. But,
yeah.
Well,
and then the story progresses, and it turns out none of them are the new Superman. Superman has not actually been dead, but in some sort of suspended animation, because we don't know what death means for a Kryptonian. And his body is spirited back to the Fortress of Solitude and brought back.
There you go. It's full circle for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So after you do this, like we're now into Comic Cons. Like how many Comic Cons do you do a year? I mean, this is pre-COVID. I mean, we realize the issues of that.
Yeah. The most I've done in a year is 14.
Holy smokes. And
so that's a little more than one a month.
Right.
Of course, everything stopped for 2 years during the pandemic. Right. This year, I think we have 9 lined up.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll do more than 12.
Yeah, it's a very tiring process of sitting in booths. So you go there on behalf of DC, for instance? Is that what you do?
No, I go on behalf of myself.
Oh, that's pretty okay. No, that's great to do that. I mean, okay, so I've seen pictures of Comic Cons, lineups like crazy. The venues are packed full of that. People dressed up. It's a party. Like it's really amazing. And I've seen lineups like I think your wife has posted pictures of people online waiting to get to your booth as well, and talking to you. So what happens when they get to your booth? What kind of stuff are you doing? Like to interact with them?
Sometimes they may want a sketch.
Yeah.
Often they just want their comic books autographed.
Photo op, probably.
Sometimes they're looking at what small amount of original art I might be bringing, photo ops, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and generally it's just a chance to chat, connect with fans. I tell people it's what passes for my social life.
You know what, you think about it, it's an amazing way to connect with a creator, like for a fan. How else do you get to do that, right? That's the people, and in a sort of casual way, but everybody kind of you go there expecting people to come and talk to you, and they go there expecting to see, the different heroes that people that have been drawing their heroes. I mean, that's it's a magic way of doing that. It's sort of, I remember going to Disney with my kids, and you could go get a caricature done by some of the Disney guys. They have a little booth set up and they do a caricature of somebody. So, the Hanna-Barbera guys, everybody looks like Fred Flintstone. I mean, when you get your pick cork done, but that's the artist, you're working the floor, right? That's what has to happen. And if you don't use your lineage and the history that you've built and you're following well, then it's like anything else. If you don't use your Instagram or your Facebook in a proper way, you're not going to generate your following and keep it enticing, keep them engaged in what you're doing. But I think Comic Cons are pretty amazing. So over to the one side, you can see Batman here. That'd be one of it says commission. So somebody requested that to be done, for instance. Yeah.
Yep. And again, well, it was a commission that I did. And then because I still had the file in my computer, I decided to take a stab at coloring it again.
Yeah.
On Photoshop too.
Yeah. No.
Took hours. Hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, well, they have some new programs that's probably a little quicker to do some.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to actually break down and start getting new programs.
Yeah, me and I would have had to airbrush that pretty much.
Yeah,
probably for me it would have been just about as quick. You know what? When Photoshop came out, and I have Photoshop 3, and it's I don't know what they're up to now. 10,
17, I think.
Yeah, but in those days when that came out, I cleaned my airbrush, put it in the drawer and closed it, sent my tank back to Ackland's and said I don't need it anymore. And I don't do airbrush anymore. So I'll just do a little bit of occasionally when I have to do some Photoshop, but I try not to do much.
Probably get better on your lungs.
Yeah, well, you could wear a COVID mask if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Where you're doing it, but I always like a blue nose myself, so I just thought it always seemed to be blue. I don't know why that was, right? It had to be blue. So there you are. Are you at the comic store in Saskatoon? Is that one that shot's from?
Yeah, that looks like might have been looks to have been Free Comic Book Day.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Okay, I found it online. I just thought.
There you go.
So you got Robin in your pencil there. Oops,
yeah, 80. Yeah, the kid is 80 years old at that point. He's a little older than that now.
Yeah, maybe 100 almost, I think.
Superman is 85.
Is he? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I remember watching 1964, 65 on TV. It was pretty bad, but we thought it was pretty good in the day to see Batman on TV. And Superman was always a little pudgy. I always thought he was a little, little pudgy. But anyway, he strengthened him up. He actually squared his jaw up a little bit, and he's a little meaner, tougher than he used to be on TV. I guess he couldn't be that way in the 60s. You had to be a little kinder. And even the Joker was kind of funny, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when you did a commission, would you take that home and finish it and ship it to the client? Is that how you do those? And you take a commission at the table, or do you try?
I generally don't. I might do sketches at the table, which are just very simple kinds of quick things I can do in an hour.
So they'll come back and get them after you do it.
Yeah, because the thing about at a convention is the lighting is always bad. It's noisy, lots of people around.
Yeah. And
usually the chair they supply you with is not good.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't want to be hauling all this art equipment with me to do sketches and things. So I just keep it, pretty low key. But I do take commissions on stuff. I have a rep that looks after that. Thank heavens, he looks after all the shipping and payment and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I can just concentrate on doing the commission and not worry about it.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff are fans saying when they come and meet you after all those years they've been following? I mean, your age group, what is that? Is it a young to older people? Like what's the age span you've
seems to be from teenagers up to my age and maybe older.
Yeah.
The thing that gets me is the kids who will, like teenagers who will show up at my table with a copy of Superboy that came out in the 90s. And I'll ask them, how did you get interested in this? Because they're clearly not old enough to have bought them off the rack.
Right.
And they've discovered the character usually through some cartoon or other on TV. And they fall in love with the character and they find out there are these comic books and they go digging through dollar bins. I'm the king of the dollar bin. And, pick up back issues and they'll show up at my table and ask me to autograph them.
Yeah.
So that is very cool to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's very nice. It's a resurgence for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, that there are these kids who weren't even around when I did this work who are, getting hooked on it.
I think the TV show or the movies have done that when they bring all these. They're all, I don't know, the Justice League. I don't know the names of all the superheroes that are on TV, in the movies, right? I think DC film has done that. Correct. I mean, we're talking a $23 billion industry. It's huge dollars.
Well, so you would hope those things would be a gateway for some people to at least try and search out the source material.
Right. Yeah. I heard it was just as I talked with one person that was an artist on working on those films, and she said they lock you in a trailer. You said same process, right? They'll come up, but they don't want also leakage. They don't want the idea to get out into the media, which can happen immediately now. You can one phone call, one Instagram, you blow the whole line is all blown. There's no secrecy anymore, right? You can't.
The internet has ruined everything.
It definitely has washed it down. Anyway, I really want to talk to you about, you had a project of your own, like you and your writer, Kessler. Yeah. You produced
Here it is.
called
Section 0.
Section 0, your own product.
Yeah.
Can you go? Okay, so this has been on the process for a number of years, like the beginning stages, the thought process of it, where it was coming from. So what happened in the initial stage when you and your writer were coming up with a concept for this, for 0? What happened in that first stage? You had things planned out, from what I understand, a production and that. And can you just, I mean, every artist goes through these dreams. What happened in that first stage?
Okay. We started working on it somewhere around 1999, 2000. And we had gathered together a kind of an imprint, which was a bunch of different creators working on their own projects to be published by somebody. And there had initially been someone lined up to do the publishing, and that fell through. So we decided to do it ourselves through Image Comics. And the thing we rapidly found out is that publishing your own comics, one of my colleagues describes it as setting money on fire. It's really time consuming. It's a tremendous amount of work. At that time, Carl Kiesel and I were FedExing stuff back and forth to each other to do this thing. And it was a fortune just for that. And we got 3 issues into it, and I don't want to get into, the stuff that ended up happening, but Carl wasn't able to continue. And for personal reasons. So we put it on the shelf. We got 3 issues published and out there and could not continue. 17 years later, there's, the internet's a thing, and there are crowdfunding sites, and Kickstarter exists. And Carl contacts me and says, maybe we can do a Kickstarter and at least finish our story. To which I said, sure, if that'll work. And turned out that we did a Kickstarter campaign. Carl actually set up all of that because
it's complicated.
It's easier. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
And, it's a lot of work. And we got the funding to be able to finish production of and publish as a very handsome hardcover with spot varnish and the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
the complete story.
Yeah.
A complete story arc. And it turned out to be a pretty good story, I think. Considering and
yeah.
Carl did a very interesting thing is he wrote into the story the 17-year gap.
Yeah. Go ahead.
from the first half of the story to the second half of the story. And when he told me about it, I said, "You're insane." From a story standpoint, I can't see how you're going to be able to pull that off. But he did.
Yeah.
He was able to do it. And it made sense. So there it is. Quite proud of it. We're currently working on a follow-up that we're about 3/4 of the way through. We should have been done long ago, but a pandemic happened for one thing, and the world went insane. So it's caused some bumps in the road, but we are continuing to work on it, and it should be done very soon. Because, like I say, we're 3/4 of the way through it.
Yeah.
So
put me on the list. Yeah, put me on the list for one. I'll be there.
Okay.
I lost my thought here for a second, but I think it's was zero. I was thinking about that. Oh well, lost my thought. Anyway, it's amazing, when you think that an artist really loves what they do. I mean, it's really hard to kick us. We still get back up. It's sort of like if you didn't get the grant or the funding. Now I kind of remember what I was thinking about, but when in the Kickstarter, so the process, they would give you money towards your project in lieu of a promise that you would do for them. So what kind of little, I guess, things you gave them on behalf of their contribution? What kind of things that happened that you'd give to them?
Okay, I got to think about this. What kinds of things we would do? I get when you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, there are different goals.
Right.
If you reach a certain goal of money raised, it unlocks a extra incentive kind of thing, like a poster or some original art.
Right.
Or in some cases, you'll get these very fancy classon pins or things like that. And this is the drawback of doing a Kickstarter, is coming up with the incentives and the extras, which are a lot of work on their own.
I had heard that you had
over and above the project you're trying to do.
Right.
So if anybody's thinking of doing a Kickstarter, think very carefully about that side of it.
The incentives. Yeah.
Incentive.
So I heard that you had actually included people in the crowd scenes and a few things.
Yes. Yeah. That can be a prize or whatever you want to call it. Is there are actually a number of people who were drawn into the story.
That's a great incentive. That's a great incentive for the fan. Yeah,
it's a cute one, and that's not so hard because you're actually still getting the project done.
Right. No, I think it's just amazing that what you two guys did. I mean, I give you all the kudos in the world to pick yourself back up, and boy, oh boy, and I mean, you're in a tough business. You're using not only your skill set, but your knowledge of the business and know how your fans like to be treated. I think that's really important. And giving back is, the Comic-Coms are a little bit like giving back, and it's nice to get even of yourself, get a pat on the back and a thank you for that edition. I really enjoyed that, and I think it's inexpensive, really, but it's a really nice kudo. And all the best to you guys. It was an amazing run. You guys are going on a good roller coaster ride in your life. But you know what? I think artists are always like that. There's always a roller coaster ride for just about everybody in their own context, right? You've got your highs and your lows and your successes and your, when you kind of get down on yourselves. And it's great to have people around you that help you. Yeah. And Kickstarters are like that, I think, a little bit. So their work, but I think it's a way of reaching out. It's kind of nice. Well, I would thank you again, Tom, very much for joining us.
Yes.
Really,
This
Thank
was
you,
fun.
Tom.
I think
Your
Steve.
work,
fascinating.
absolutely beautiful. Before we go, though, quick question, and Paul is right. So, and you already know the questions I asked. So, if somebody wants a commission, how do they get one? And two, if you have art that you're selling, how do they find it? And what does it go for? And all that fun stuff.
Okay, I'm not on Facebook.
Neither am I. So we're good. So,
However,
yes.
my rep runs the Tom Grummett fan page on Facebook.
Okay.
And he's the administrator of it. And if anybody's interested in the commission or is looking for original art, they can just contact him through there.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
the easiest.
I don't think I gave you that. I didn't have that information. Steve,
That's okay.
you can find it.
Tom Grummett, there's his name, and I pressed put Tom Grummett fan group, and I bet they'll find it.
Tom
It's the
Grummett
only
fan page.
fan page. There you go. And like you said, he's probably one of the only guests we've had that has a Wikipedia page that's longer than the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I don't think it's hard to find Tom. That's not going to be the issue if you want something from Tom. So,
Gotcha.
but Tom, thank you. This was a privilege and an honor for us.
Amazing.
It was
Yes.
great. And
Well, thank
Paul,
you,
you
guys.
always do a good job. So we greatly appreciate it.
Tremendous.
Now,
Thank you, Paul.
David has ending credits. You can hang around if you want and answer some final questions. And then we like to talk to Paul. And everybody, thank you for watching. And if you're on the podcast, thank you for listening. And you definitely want to go over to the YouTube channel and see all the pictures because they're absolutely gorgeous.